You know that feeling when someone thinks they can outsmart you, but they don't realize you've been playing chess while they're playing checkers? Well, let me tell you about Margaret Thornfield, the HOA president, who thought she could con me out of my family's ranch land, steal my private lake, and hand it over to her boyfriend for pennies on the dollar. What she didn't expect was for me to turn the tables so hard that she lost everything she'd worked years to control. I'm Jake Riverside, and 6 months ago, I inherited something most people only dream about: a 500-acre ranch in Montana with a pristine 40-acre lake right in the middle. The kind of place where eagles nest in the cottonwoods and the sunrise paints the water gold every morning. My grandfather built this ranch with his bare hands in 1952, and for 70 years it had been our family's sanctuary. The ranch sat in Pine Valley, surrounded by rolling hills dotted with wildflowers and sagebrush. The lake was fed by a natural spring that kept the water crystal clear year-round. Bass jumped at dawn, deer came to drink at dusk, and on quiet evenings, you could hear nothing but wind through the pines and the gentle lap of water against the shore. Grandpa Jakey was named after him. Used to say that land like this chose its owner, not the other way around. This place will take care of you if you take care of it, he'd tell me during summer visits when I was a kid. But it won't tolerate being disrespected. I'd spent every summer here until I turned 18, and life pulled me toward college. Then career, then the endless cycle of city living. But the ranch never left my heart. When Grandpa passed and left it to me, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I quit my corporate job in Denver, sold my condo, and moved to Pine Valley to start the guest ranch I'd been dreaming about for years. The plan was simple: fix up the old cabins, restore the main lodge, and create a place where families could experience the Montana wilderness the way I had as a kid. The property was perfect for it. Besides the main house where I lived, there were 6 rustic cabins scattered around the lake, a large lodge building that could serve as a dining hall, and enough open space for horseback riding, hiking, and all the outdoor activities city folks pay good money to experience. For 3 months, I worked 16-hour days renovating cabins, repairing fences, and planning the business. The lake became my evening sanctuary. After long days of construction and planning, I'd sit on the dock with a beer, watching the sun set behind the mountains, feeling like I was finally home. That's when I learned about the Pine Valley Estates Homeowners Association. Apparently, about 15 years ago, a luxury development had been built on the hillside overlooking my ranch. Massive houses with manicured lawns and 3-car garages, the kind of place where people moved to experience country living without actually getting their hands dirty. The HOA president was Margaret Thornfield, a woman in her late 50s with perfectly styled silver hair, a wardrobe that cost more than most people's cars, and the kind of entitlement that comes from never being told no. She drove a white Escalade with vanity plates that read Boss Lady and treated Pine Valley like her personal kingdom. Margaret lived in the biggest house on the hill, a sprawling mansion with massive windows that offered a perfect view of my lake, and apparently she'd been coveting that view for years. I first met Margaret on a Tuesday morning when I was replacing boards on the main dock. The sound of expensive heels clicking across wooden planks made me look up from my work. "Excuse me," she called out, in a voice that carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Are you the new owner?" I stood up, hammer in hand, and faced a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a country club magazine. Perfect makeup, designer jeans that had never seen actual work, and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. "That's me, Jake Riverside." Her eyes swept over me: work boots, worn jeans, flannel shirt with actual holes from actual work, and I could see her cataloging me as beneath her notice. "I'm Margaret Thornfield, president of Pine Valley Estates, HOA. We need to discuss your situation, my situation. This property." She gestured around like she was indicating a crime scene. "It's an eyesore. Run-down buildings, that old dock, the cabins that look like they haven't been maintained in decades. It's bringing down property values for the entire community." I looked around at my family's ranch, at the lake that had been crystal clear for 70 years, at the cabins I'd been lovingly restoring for months. "I'm renovating everything. It's going to be a guest ranch." Margaret's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "A guest ranch? You mean a commercial operation, with strangers camping and making noise and disturbing the peace? It's zoned for commercial use, always has been." "Well, that's going to change. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. The HOA has significant influence with the County Planning Commission. We can make operating a business here ... very difficult. That was threat number one. Look, Mrs. Thornfield, I'm just trying to make an honest living and honor my grandfather's legacy. I'm not looking for trouble. Then perhaps you'd be interested in a solution that benefits everyone. Here it comes, I thought. My boyfriend, Richard Blackwood, is a property developer. He's been looking for the right location for an exclusive lakefront resort. High-end, low-impact, the kind of development that would actually improve the area. You want me to sell? I want you to be realistic. You're one man trying to run a 500-acre operation. That's not sustainable. Richard could offer you a very fair price for the property, and you could walk away with enough money to start over somewhere more ... appropriate. The ranch isn't for sale. Margaret's smile turned predatory. Everything is for sale, Jake. It's just a matter of finding the right motivation. Over the next month, Margaret's motivation campaign began in earnest. First, it was noise complaints. According to Margaret, my renovation work was disturbing the peace. Even though I only worked during normal business hours and followed all county regulations, the sheriff's deputy who came to investigate was apologetic but thorough. "Sorry, Mr. Riverside," Deputy Martinez said after walking the property. "We have to respond to all complaints, but I don't see any violations here. You're well within your rights." Next came the environmental concerns. Margaret filed a complaint with the State Environmental Agency, claiming my dock was contaminating the lake and my septic system was leaking. 2 weeks and 3 different inspections later, everything was cleared, but the stress and lost time were taking their toll. Then she escalated to the health department, claiming I was running an unlicensed food service operation. That was particularly ridiculous since I wasn't even open for business yet, but it still required a formal inspection and documentation. Each complaint was baseless, but each one cost me time, money, and peace of mind. Margaret was playing a war of attrition, trying to make my life so miserable that I'd eventually give up and sell. But the real low blow came on a Thursday evening in June. I was on the dock again, this time with my sister Amy, who'd driven up from Billings to see the progress I'd made. We were sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars come out over the lake when we heard the rumble of a large truck coming down my private road. "Expecting company?" Amy asked. Before I could answer, a massive RV rounded the bend, followed by 2 more trucks pulling travel trailers. They drove straight past the private property signs and parked in the meadow next to the lake. What the hell? I stood up, anger rising in my chest. A man in his 40s climbed out of the RV, looked around like he owned the place, and started directing the other vehicles where to park. This had to be Richard Blackwood, Margaret's boyfriend and wannabe property developer. I walked over, Amy following close behind. "Excuse me, you're on private property. You need to leave." Richard looked me up and down with the kind of smug confidence that comes from having money and connections. He was shorter than me, but broader, with the soft build of someone who spent more time in boardrooms than outdoors. His clothes screamed expensive casual, the kind of outfit that cost more than my monthly budget. "Actually, we have permission to be here," he said, pulling out his phone. "Margaret Thornfield authorized our use of this lake for the weekend, some kind of HOA community event. Margaret Thornfield doesn't own this property. I do. Are you sure about that?" Richard's smile was oily. "Because we did a title search, and there are some irregularities in your ownership claim." My blood went cold. "What kind of irregularities?" "Well, for starters, there's a question about whether your grandfather's will was properly executed. And then there's the matter of unpaid property taxes from 2018. The county has a lien on this property that could force a sale." He was lying, had to be, but he sounded so confident, so sure of his facts. "You're going to want to check with your lawyer," Richard continued. "In the meantime, we'll be using the lake this weekend as planned. Try not to disturb our guests." I spent that night on the phone with my attorney, demanding answers. It took until the next afternoon to confirm what I already knew. Richard was lying about everything. The will was solid, the taxes were current, and there was no lien on the property. But by then, Richard's weekend getaway had turned into a full-scale invasion. They'd set up a party tent on my beach, brought in a DJ, and were running jet skis on the lake like they owned it. My peaceful sanctuary had become their personal playground, and there wasn't much I could do about it without risking an escalation that could turn violent. Amy stayed with me that weekend, helping me document everything, with photos and videos. This is harassment, Jake, pure and simple. I know, but I need to be smart about how I handle it. Saturday night, the party got loud, really loud, music thumping until past midnight, drunken laughter echoing across the water, jet skis racing around the lake with no regard for wildlife or noise ordinances. I called the sheriff's department 3 times. Each time, they said they'd send someone out. Each time, no one showed up. Sunday morning brought a new humiliation. Richard knocked on my door at 7 a.m., dressed in fishing gear and carrying an expensive rod. "Morning, neighbor," he said cheerfully. "Mind if I fish off your dock? Margaret mentioned you were thinking about selling, so I figured I'd get a feel for the property. Get off my land. Now. No need to be hostile. We're all going to be neighbors soon." That's when I snapped. "We're not neighbors. You're trespassing. Pack up your circus and get out, or I'm calling the police." Richard's friendly mask slipped. "You know what your problem is, Jake. You think this is still 1950, when some old cowboy could just homestead a piece of land and call it his kingdom. This is the modern world. Money talks, and you don't have enough of it to play this game. Watch me." But as I watched his convoy pack up and leave that Sunday afternoon, I felt something I hadn't experienced since childhood: powerlessness. These people had money, connections, and apparently the ability to make the system work in their favor. What did I have? That's when I decided to get serious about fighting back. Monday morning, I drove to the county courthouse and spent the day in the records office, researching everything I could find about Pine Valley Estates, Margaret Thornfield, and the HOA she controlled. What I found was fascinating. The Pine Valley Estates HOA controlled a significant amount of common property: parks, a community center, tennis courts, and most importantly, a 20-acre piece of land that included their private clubhouse and swimming pool. The clubhouse was the crown jewel of the development, a $2 million facility that hosted events, meetings, and social gatherings for the community's wealthy residents. But here's where it got interesting. The HOA was behind on its property taxes. Not just a little behind, they owed $47,000 in back taxes going back 3 years. Margaret, in her role as HOA president, had apparently been juggling the books, using new assessments to pay old debts and hoping nobody would notice. In Montana, unpaid property taxes can result in a tax lien sale. If the HOA didn't pay what they owed, the county could auction off their property to recover the debt. I spent the next week researching tax lien procedures, talking to real estate attorneys, and forming a plan that would make Margaret regret the day she decided to mess with my family's ranch. The county tax lien auction was scheduled for the last Friday of the month. Properties with unpaid taxes would be auctioned to the highest bidder, with the winning bidder paying the tax debt in exchange for ownership of the property. I registered as a bidder and started liquidating assets. The $47,000 debt was substantial, but not impossible. I sold some stock, took a loan against my truck, and called in a few favors from friends who believed in what I was doing. Margaret had no idea what was coming. The auction was held in the county courthouse basement, a sterile room with fluorescent lighting and folding chairs that squeaked when you moved. About 20 people showed up, mostly real estate investors, looking for bargains. The auctioneer was a thin man with a nasal voice who rattled through properties like he was reading a grocery list. Most of the auctions involved small parcels or rundown buildings that nobody wanted. Then he got to the Pine Valley Estates common property. Lot 847. Pine Valley Estates Homeowners Association common area includes clubhouse, pool facility, and recreational amenities. Outstanding tax debt of $47,000. Do I hear an opening bid? I raised my hand. 47,000. The auctioneer looked around the room. I have 47,000. Do I hear 48? Silence. Going once. Going twice. Sold to bidder number 23. Just like that, I owned the Pine Valley Estates clubhouse. The best part, Margaret had no idea until the paperwork was filed with the county on Monday morning. I was replacing a window in cabin 3 when my phone rang. The caller ID said M. Thornfield, and I let it ring 3 times before answering. Jake speaking. What the hell do you think you're doing? Margaret's voice was shrill with panic. I'm sorry, you'll have to be more specific. The clubhouse. You bought our clubhouse. That's theft. Actually, Margaret, it's called a tax lien auction. Perfectly legal. Maybe if your HOA had paid its property taxes, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You can't do this. That clubhouse belongs to the community. Nope. According to the deed I'm holding, it belongs to me now. Along with the pool, the tennis courts, and all the recreational facilities your residents pay HOA fees to use. The silence on the other end was delicious. What do you want? She finally asked. I want you to leave me alone. Stop the harassment. Stop the bogus complaints. And tell your boyfriend to find somewhere else to play developer. You're making a mistake, Jake. I have connections. I can make your life very difficult. Margaret, I now own the thing your entire community values most. I can lock the gates, drain the pool, and turn your precious clubhouse into a storage facility. How difficult do you think that would make your life? Tuesday morning brought a parade of expensive cars to my ranch. Margaret, Richard, and what looked like the entire HOA board pulled up in a convoy that would have been impressive if it wasn't. So desperate, I met them on the porch, coffee in hand, enjoying the role reversal. Gentlemen, Margaret. I nodded politely. What can I do for you? Richard stepped forward, trying to project authority. We're here to discuss a reasonable solution to this situation. I'm listening. You return the clubhouse to the HOA, and we'll drop all complaints against your ranch operation. I sipped my coffee, taking my time. That's not much of an offer, Richard. You're asking me to give up a $2 million property in exchange for you stopping illegal harassment. One of the board members, a nervous man in his 60s, spoke up. Mr. Riverside, our residents are very upset. They pay significant HOA fees for access to those facilities. I understand that, and I'm prepared to honor those commitments. You are. Margaret sounded suspicious. Absolutely. For a reasonable rental fee, your residents can continue using the facilities, let's say $2,000 per month. $2,000. Richard's face turned red. That's extortion. That's business. Richard, supply and demand. You demand access to my property. I supply it for a fair market price. We'll fight this, Margaret said. We'll take you to court. Go ahead. But while you're filing lawsuits, your residents are going to be asking why they can't use the pool they're paying for. How long do you think you'll stay HOA president when people find out you let their tax obligations lapse? The group huddled for a whispered conversation. I could see Margaret arguing with Richard, both of them gesturing angrily, while the board members looked increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, Margaret turned back to me. We need time to consider your offer. Take all the time you need. The gates will be locked until we reach an agreement. That afternoon, I drove to the clubhouse to inspect my new property. It was even more impressive up closer, sprawling building with floor-to-ceiling windows, a commercial kitchen, and a ballroom that could host 200 people. The pool area was resort quality, with a hot tub, poolside bar, and landscaping that probably cost more than most people's houses. I found the main breaker and shut off the power. Then I padlocked the gates and posted signs. Private property, no trespassing. Jake Riverside, owner. My phone started ringing within an hour. Jake, this is Tom Fitzgerald. I live at 1247 Pine Valley Drive. Listen, I don't know what's going on with the HOA politics, but my kids use that pool every day. Is there any way we can work something out? Absolutely, Tom. I'm not trying to punish residents for the HOA's mistakes. Give me a call and we'll figure out a day pass system. Tom was the first of many calls. Turned out, most of the residents had no idea their HOA was behind on taxes, and they were furious with Margaret for letting it happen. Several offered to pay me directly for pool access, rather than deal with HOA drama. By Wednesday, Margaret was facing a full-scale revolt. The emergency HOA meeting was held Thursday night in the community center, the only facility they still controlled. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. Tom Fitzgerald called me with updates every hour. It's a disaster, he reported. Half the residents are demanding Margaret's resignation. The other half are threatening to sue her personally for mismanagement. Someone brought up the idea of dissolving the HOA entirely. What's Margaret's response? She's blaming you, saying you're some kind of con artist who took advantage of a clerical error, but nobody's buying it. People are looking at their HOA fee statements and asking where the money went. Friday morning, Margaret showed up at my ranch alone. No Richard, no board members, no convoy of expensive cars. just her white Escalade, and a woman who looked like she'd aged 10 years in a week. "I need to talk to you," she said without preamble. "I'm listening." "The residents are furious. They're calling for my resignation, threatening lawsuits, the whole 9 yards. I could lose everything." "That's unfortunate, Margaret, but it's not my problem." "What do you want?" "Money. I can write you a check right now for the tax debt, plus interest." "I don't want your money." "Then what?" I looked at this woman who'd spent months trying to destroy my dreams, who'd sixed her boyfriend on me, who'd treated my family's ranch like it was hers to control. "I want you to understand something, Margaret. This ranch has been in my family for 70 years. My grandfather built it with his hands, raised cattle on this land, and created something that meant everything to him. When you tried to take that away from me, you weren't just attacking a business, you were attacking my family's legacy." Her face was pale, but she was listening. "I want a written apology to be read at the next HOA meeting. I want all harassment to stop immediately. I want Richard Blackwood banned from this property permanently, and I want you to resign as HOA president. And if I do all that, I'll sell the clubhouse back to the HOA for exactly what I paid for it, $47,000. Margaret's relief was visible. "Done. I'll have the paperwork ready by Monday." But I wasn't finished. "One more thing, Margaret. I'm going to open my guest ranch in 3 months. When I do, I expect you and your neighbors to treat my guests with the same respect you'd want for yourselves. This is a small community, and we're going to be neighbors for a long time." "Of course, absolutely." 6 months later, Riverside Guest Ranch opened to its first group of visitors. The cabins were beautifully restored, the lake was pristine, and the reviews were incredible. Families came from all over the country to experience the Montana wilderness the way my grandfather had always envisioned. Margaret kept her word. She resigned as HOA president, issued a public apology, and never bothered me again. Richard Blackwood disappeared from Pine Valley entirely, apparently deciding to pursue development opportunities elsewhere. The new president, Tom Fitzgerald, stopped by regularly to chat and check on how things were going. Several residents became regular customers, bringing their visiting family members to experience the ranch. But the best part came on a quiet evening in September, when I was sitting on the dock, watching the sun set over the lake that had almost been stolen from me. Margaret walked down from the main road, moving slowly, like someone who wasn't sure of her welcome. "Jake, could I talk to you for a minute?" I gestured to the empty chair beside me. "What's on your mind, Margaret?" She sat down carefully, looking out over the water. "I owe you another apology. A real one, not the formal statement I read at the meeting. I'm listening. I spent 15 years looking at this lake from my house, thinking about how much better I could make it, how much more valuable it could be. I convinced myself that your grandfather was wasting it, that it needed proper development, proper management." She paused, watching a pair of loons glide across the water. "But sitting here now, seeing it the way you've restored it, understanding what it means to your family, I realize I was wrong about everything. This place doesn't need improvement, it needs protection." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the evening sounds of the ranch cattle lowing in the distance, wind through the pines, the gentle lap of water against the dock. "Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What made you think you had the right to take this from me?" She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. "Money," she said finally. "I got used to having it, used to being able to buy whatever I wanted, influence whatever I needed to influence. I forgot that some things aren't for sale." "Like what?" "Like legacy, like belonging, like the kind of peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be." As the stars came out over Pine Valley, I thought about my grandfather's words. "This place will take care of you if you take care of it, but it won't tolerate being disrespected." He was right, as always. The ranch had taken care of itself, using me as the instrument of its protection. Margaret had learned what happened when you disrespected something sacred, and I'd learned something too. Sometimes the best way to protect what you love is to be willing to fight for it, even when the odds seem impossible. Have you ever had someone try to take something that belonged to your family? Someone who thought money and connections could overrule your rights? Drop your stories in the comments side. Love to hear how you fought back. And if this story reminded you that some things are worth fighting for, no matter who's trying to take them away, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to people who think they can push you around. Trust me, There's always a way to turn the tables when someone underestimates what you're willing to do to protect what matters most.